Welcome back to another distro delve. This time we're taking a look at Fedora 44 with KDE. Now typically when I look at Fedora on distro delves, I pick the GNOME version, but since we just looked at GNOME on Ubuntu, and I know it's not quite the same thing, we're going to look at Fedora Linux on KDE Plasma, which is the same desktop that I'm running while I record and edit this. It's just on Ubuntu. So on a personal level, I'm actually kind of curious to see what Fedora does different, and they probably won't do a ton different because Fedora tries to stick with upstream. They release about every 6 months, so there's not a huge number of changes between the release. But since I haven't looked at Fedora in quite a while, a lot of things will still be new to me, so we'll start out by looking at the live session, of which this is. It's a USB that I booted into. It's got partition tools, and it can actually access my Windows drive straight from the live session. I didn't try that on Ubuntu, but we'll talk about that later. Now, a funny thing about this little welcome app or welcome center is right in the middle it says install to hard drive. I didn't realize that that was a button, so I just clicked next, and it turns out this is actually the KDE welcome app. So it started walking through like you were setting up your desktop for like codecs and different apps and capabilities that KDE can have. So that was a little weird. So when you go back and actually get into the installer, oh my gosh. I don't really know why I love software installers so much. It's kind of weird, but this installer is so nice, and we just followed up on Ubuntu's installer, which is also really nice. The new Fedora installer, and I don't think it's new for 44, I think it's actually been out for a while. It's the first time I'm seeing it, and it reminds me a bit of OpenSUSE's installer, which is also super cool. And one thing that was less than super cool is when we got to partitioning, like when you have to choose the spot you're going to install to, it didn't want to do it automatically, so I had to open the reclaim space thing and get rid of Ubuntu. I was actually a little worried that it wouldn't work, but it actually did. The installer is very simple. It's just a couple of screens, not a lot of configurability going on, and the install process itself is pretty Spartan. It's just this screen, and when it's done, it's done. And we rebooted. Everything worked just fine. Grub was happy. I saw the Fedora logo in the boot screen. And then we drop into a Welcome to Plasma desktop setup thing. And I know that GNOME does this and has done this for quite some time. I've never seen KDE do this, so this is brand new to me. I don't think it's Fedora specific, but I mean, hey, I've got more delves to do, so I want to see who else does this. But it's the same idea as you've probably seen before. You install, and then on first boot, it sets up your user and stuff. And after all of that, we get to the login screen, and this is actually new. It's Plasma Login Manager, and you only see it for like a second because you're logging in. But to me, KDE has always used SDDM, Simple Display Desktop Display Manager. But I guess they're going in-house now, so they're managing their own display. I don't really know why or what the story with that is, but it's cool. Comes with the standard KDE welcome app, which shows you how to use your computer and asks you a couple questions, things like that. Wants you to update at the end, but we're not going to do that. No, instead we're going to look at free, and we're going to look at DF and see that the system at idle, after it's settled down and everything, 3 gigabytes of memory, holy schmoly. But on the flip side, the install size, like how much a brand new install is, 4.5 gigabytes. 4.5 gigabytes for a fresh install of Fedora. That is crazy. And while I'm installing FastFetch, I do just want to ask, why is the Copper repo for PyCharm installed by default? That has been there forever, but I don't get it. Like, I'm never going to use PyCharm. I don't know why that comes in there. And it only adds 2 seconds to the download, but still, I don't get it. This is Fedora Linux 44. It's running on my Geekum A7 Max. We're running Linux 6.19, on KDE Plasma 6.6.4, Kwin and Wayland, of course, there's no X to be seen here. Icon theme and all of it is Breeze with Noto Sans, very generic. And after this I tried to install htop and bottom and discovered that bottom is not in the default repos like it is with Ubuntu. Instead you have to install a Copper repo to get a hold of it. We see in bottom the system is using about 3 gigabytes of memory and also 25% of the VRAM budget, I guess just to show the display. And then in htop it shows 2.7 gigabytes, so a little bit less. System's been running for about 10 minutes and the load average is, I'm not actually sure how to speak the load average, but it's not working very hard. The default set of apps for Fedora is interesting. I think some might call it bloated because it does come with a lot, and I don't remember seeing an option to say minimal or heavyweight desktop. But it's not bad. Everything is on topic. Just maybe a couple things like random debug things that don't really assist the user unless you're like developing or what have you. It's KDE Plasma 6.6.4 with KDE Framework 6.25, Qt version 6.10. The default web browser is Fedora, and it comes with Contact. Here's a KDE app you don't see too often. I'm really surprised to see it in Fedora, if I'm honest. I don't know, maybe it's because I come from a time where these were more of a thing, but I actually kind of like these. They're called Personal Information Managers, and Thunderbird is technically one of them. Vivaldi, the web browser, can be one of them, but it's kind of like a one-stop shop for all of your stuff, like your email, your contacts, calendar. It's basically what Google or G Suite or whatever you use has become, but it's local. I like how they're fully integrated with the desktop and give you notifications, but I'm rambling about Contact, and it's just like part of the system, but this probably is what makes this desktop a bit heavier than one might expect. Another really cool thing I liked is it comes with games. Like, why not? It's a desktop, you know, like people play time wasting or time passing games. Like, I don't see a problem with it. And KDE actually has several games. I think GNOME has games too, pretty good ones. The games on offer are Mahjong, K-Mines, and K-Patience, which is a whole bunch of just kind of card games. There's also a silly little MS Paint clone, and you can get all your heavyweight designing and graphics tools and stuff too. And it ships with KDE's Matrix chat called NeoChat, and just for funsies, I wanted to see if I could connect because, you know, why not? Like, there's no reason not to, and sure enough, I was able to connect to my EG Labs. And then this is crazy. So I'm recording as I'm figuring this out. You know, it's just like a live feed that I'm working through the system. But I noticed at the top right, it has a camera up there, and I use Element, and I've never been able to get video to work. So I clicked the camera and it said, you want to start a new meeting with Jitsi? And what the heck, it actually worked. I guess it just installed the Jitsi extension, but I tried it from my desktop and it actually worked. So that's just really fun. Cool. So yeah, as far as changes go on Fedora 44, we've already seen kind of the biggest one that's relevant to us here is the Plasma Login Manager. And the Plasma Setup, actually, that's new, and it's really cool. There's also some work done in Fedora Ready, which is a program that now covers KDE for marketing and hardware certification, apparently. That's really cool. But one of the main things we're going to be looking at on this one is some gaming performance around NTSYNC, which is enabled by default now. It's some kernel level Wine Proton Sync thing. It's supposed to give us some better performance. And then Mesa 26. And next, before we get to updates and installing apps and things, I want to try to style this desktop because there's not actually a whole lot you can do here. KDE kind of used to have a reputation of being very styleful and having different ways you can make it look like different things, but here you have one desktop background and it's just blue. Now, to be fair, there are other backgrounds, but they all just kind of come with KDE. And Fedora does have its own theme, but it's basically just Breeze Twilight, which is a mix of black and white. It's mostly a light theme with black accents, and it's actually pretty nice. Now, one thing that I did notice that I don't have on my desktop, which means I must be behind what Fedora is shipping, but I don't have this day-night cycle thing. I actually have my own desktop set to change the color based on the background, which changes every day, so every time I get on my computer it looks a little bit different. I love it. But outside of that, not really much you can do to customize your desktop. Or that's not true, actually. There's lots of desktop effects and animations, of course. And I actually didn't know you can when you turn the global animation speed down all the way, it becomes like comically slow. Like it's not really usable. I don't know why it can even go down this far. So now let's take a look at software updates and installation. Now on Ubuntu, they have their own software store. Fedora ships whatever the desktop ships. And in KDE land, it's Discover. Discover is fine. It's known for being buggy at times, especially when doing upgrades, and when I was doing a little research before this, people said that actually the first update on Fedora with Discover tends to go sideways. So I dove right in, and surprisingly it went perfect. It was actually really fast for 600 updates and like 4 GB download. It was very fast. Discover on Fedora supports Flatpak by default, and you can actually enable snaps straight from Discover. How cool is that? So all things considered for software acquisition, just being able to download anything you want, this is very good. FlatHub, Snap, DNF has a lot available to it, and then Copper repos are really easy to add. I mean, Fedora's got it going on. And now let's take a look at the beloved files tests. We'll start out by connecting the external drive, which is using extfat, which worked perfectly. And by the way, the Windows drive mounted without any problems at all. So I don't know what was going on with Ubuntu. That was not a good look, but everything works out of the box here on Fedora. Even all of my little scripts that pop up windows, they work too. The Ruby one didn't, and it's because you can't run files through the terminal by default here. It's something you can turn on in Dolphin. It's not a big deal, but every one of the documents opened just fine too in LibreOffice and Sheets and PDF stuff. And all of the archive formats opened fine, and they opened in the archive manager instead of just spilling everything out into the directory, which I just love. And now Fedora and KDE ship with this program called ELSA. It's an audio file like organizer, player thing, but it also has radio stations. I love this. There are so many good internet radio stations out there, and they're hard to find and discover. So when I see something like this that packs a bunch of actually really good ones, I'm like, yes! I couldn't figure out why Elsa wasn't discovering my music, and that was because I hadn't copied it. So it actually works just fine. I was just dumb. Now the videos played largely okay, but codec support was missing. It said there was nothing for H.264, but the codecs were actually installed, so I'm not sure what was going on with that. And I couldn't actually get GPU acceleration on any of the video files, even ones that absolutely should have, so I'm not sure what was going on there. I opened all of the dancing EGs up, and we can see that the GPU is just kind of chilling. It should be working harder than this. And all of the image formats open just fine too, including AVIF, and kind of surprising and cool actually, because these formats used to be a pain to get working. You'd have to install additional libraries and stuff. For some reason, my printer was not discovered by default, but I was able to add it and it found the drivers for it just fine, but usually it's right there. For device connectivity, it comes with KDE Connect. I'm not sure if the regular Fedora comes with the GNOME version of it, but this is really sweet. I already had it on my phone and I connected to it, and I was looking for a good way to test it, and the easiest way I could see is controlling my dancing EGs from my phone, which is kind of a neat little trick. So I was starting and stopping the playback from my phone. And Fedora didn't have any problems actually connecting to my phone through USB either. And now for the NPU test. So this is where I test the dedicated NPU for AI and like LLM processing and things. Fedora actually told the exact same story that Ubuntu did. I have the drivers, I have acceleration, dmessage says it's all loaded. I even got a hold of RockImInfo, I think that's how you say it, and verify that I have multiple of these agents, which should mean that Olama is able to use them. But it was not able to. I got a hold of Gemma 3.4b, which I was using an older model in the Ubuntu Delve. This one's way better, and it's really wordy, so I just ask it a simple question and it goes on and on and on, but we can see the CPU is who's doing the heavy lifting. That's not right. As an aside, it's really funny that it thinks that the latest Fedora is Fedora 45 that came out in 2023. Not really sure what's going on there. Also, Fedora doesn't use XFS, it uses, or at least this uses BTRFS, but I digress. Neither the GPU nor the NPU is being used here. All of this was done on the CPU, and honestly, it was pretty fast, wasn't it? Next is the Minecraft in Docker test, and oh boy, this was a fun one. If you know about Fedora, you know that Fedora uses Podman, not Docker, and while I could install Docker on there, I figure, why not use Podman? It actually is installed by default. There's a shim between Podman and Docker Compose called Podman Compose, and I can use that here. Unfortunately, it failed because it wasn't able to access the jar file. I thought that the Z was wrong, like is it supposed to be capitalized or not? I ended up just telling SE Linux in the compose file to don't worry about it. But in retrospect, I wonder if it's because I was hosting it on exFAT, and exFAT may not recognize the Z, or specifically like the file permissions. And yeah, that SE Linux notification that I forgot to mention on the bottom right, yeah, that's apparently a bug. I'm not really sure. It's a legit thing, like it identified that Java was trying to access a file it shouldn't be accessing. But But I've always had issues with SE Linux. Like, what do we do? Like, how can I fix this? It's just annoying, and AppArmor doesn't do it. Minecraft, of course, ran just fine with the server running in the background in Podman once I told SE Linux to chill out. There's also BlueMap compiling in the background, so there's actually kind of a lot of stuff. I flew around and walked around in my community server world that I'm hosting here locally that I pulled down. It's like 10 gig world. It's pretty good size, a lot of stuff going on. But I can't help but feel like Minecraft just wasn't running very good. We have complementary shaders reimagined, photon shaders, and kappa shaders. And I don't know, I'm just kind of walking around. It feels like the frame rate is worse than it was on Ubuntu. I'm not doing anything different, just flying around. Next, we'll take a look at OBS. And when we were doing updates and stuff earlier, I installed OBS through one of the Flat Hubs or Fedora's version of Flat Hub. It was a flat pack either way, and it didn't work. I could not get it to render anything. It just kept erroring out. When I looked at the log was completely useless. But I got it to work with the normal just DNF RPM package, and it works fine. This is the type of thing that I find so fascinating about Linux distros. Like Ubuntu had a different video encoder. It had two different ones, didn't it? And here we have one, OpenH264. I played Veloren through Airshipper, which I brought along with me on my SneakerNet. So it's a native Rust app that's running just locally, natively. I loaded into a flat area, so no flying here. And again, kind of like Minecraft, I was surprised this doesn't feel as smooth as it did on Ubuntu. But everything I do is still about 60, sometimes down to like 54, especially if I'm fighting and there's some stuff going on. And again, this is while I was recording with OBS in the background. So this is recording, it's rendering, it's playing and everything. There's a lot going on, but it should be able to handle it. And I forgot to record the segment for Bluetooth. And I assure you that it works just fine. I got my Amazon Luna controller going, and I dropped into a real quick game while the other games were downloading. This is Old School Rally. I've played it on stream a few times. It's actually really fun. I think it's like themed after Sega GT or Sega Rally GT or something like that. But the controller worked just fine. I was able to flick the car all over the place, had a good time. But now here comes the real test, War Thunder. So you know it has a built-in benchmark, and I'm playing it, flying around, doing some pretty good stuff. All in all, I didn't notice any problems while I was playing. There was no lag, there was no hitching, nothing. But what does the benchmark say? Modern conflict. Remember on Ubuntu, we got about 60, was it 59, something like that? Here on Fedora, modern conflict, average 76 frames a second. That is a noticeable improvement. But what about Cyberpunk 2077? This is a pretty heavy-duty game running with the same settings. 15.96. So I give it a bit of a fraction there because it's so close to Ubuntu. This doesn't make a difference. You wouldn't notice it. So there is virtually no difference between Ubuntu and Fedora with Cyberpunk in the benchmark anyway. Next, just for funsies, I want to give a cameo to my favorite Alien. Unsurprisingly, Alien Isolation runs just fine, but dang, this game holds up good. Everything on full blast, and when I first loaded it, actually defaulted everything on low. A lot of the graphical heavy lifting is done through the art, just like the ambience, so I don't think this game is actually that intense, but it ran perfectly great, and it's still as fun and spooky as ever. Now, I was hoping for some improvements in Baldur's Gate, because on Ubuntu it ran pretty bad, and I was only in the camp, so we didn't really see a whole lot of anything outside of just like dialogue. For this clip, I played a little bit longer, and I wanted to capture a really cool cutscene because there's, a lot going on. I don't think there's much difference between Ubuntu and Fedora. I'm going off memory. I'm not like comparing them side by side, but it's barely playable. You'd have to turn the graphics down to really have an enjoyable experience, but I mean, you could play it if you wanted to. Next is Deadlock. I'm playing a new character, and oh my god, he's fun. Game was getting about 35 to 45 frames a second, I think. On the low side, when there was more action, everything happening. I think that this is actually a bit better than Ubuntu. It's not exactly the most graphically intense game, but there's a lot going on and makes for a good test, and I get to try out new characters every time I do. And the game I'm playing over the outro is Wild Assault, and I'm including this one because I just wanted a quick clip because I didn't think it would actually play that well, but it does. Probably got about 40-45 frames a second the whole match, and this is Unreal 5 on Fedora 44, and I did really good. I don't know if the other team was bots or what was going on, but this was a very fun match. So, what do I think about Fedora 44? Now, funny story, I actually came from Fedora 42, 43. I think I upgraded from Fedora 42 to 43, and it was botched. It went very badly, and I rage quit and jumped over to Ubuntu Studio, and I've been there ever since. I'm really impressed with how polished Fedora has become. It's a pretty old distro, and it doesn't really show it. You can see signs of its age in the repo if you search for things, and there's just weird prefixes and odd applications that are just ancient. Debian has a lot of that too. It's kind of fun to see. But one thing that impresses me about Fedora is how well the brand has kept up. The Fedora logo is really neat. The blue is really cool. Like, even though the background is just blue, you know that it's Fedora. And I think because of that, KDE winds up being almost like a perfect fit. This desktop feels like a first-class citizen. It's just KDE kind of standing on its own, and then Fedora is there in the background, and the whole thing feels very integrated. Even the installer, what is that, Anaconda? It fits right into the whole thing. Like, it's all very cohesive. And in the world of Linux distros, where there's a lot of distros that are just kind of cobbled together with pieces from here and pieces from there, and it all just kind of works, and that's great too, don't get me wrong. But that's one of the things that stands out to me about Fedora is it's like seamless. And if I were to give it the husky paws, I would give it 3 out of 4. And I really have to reevaluate that scale because it's not very exciting. I said I'm probably not going to give anyone 4 out of 4. So if it's pretty good, it's just going to be 3 out of 4. So I think Fedora was pretty good overall, but where it fell down, if you want to, I would say that around codecs, I think. It's always been kind of a weak point for Fedora, and it's not weak like they're doing anything wrong. They have a philosophy and they're sticking to it. It's got to be open source, and if you want something that's restricted, you kind of have to self-serve. And they give you the tools to self-serve, but they don't always work perfectly, and that's where we saw the lack of GPU acceleration and stuff. That is actually probably my biggest gripe. For a distro that is supposed to be a workstation and developer-friendly, GPU acceleration doesn't work quite right out of the box, and this is AMD hardware. And the acceleration for AI development and stuff also doesn't work out of the box. Now for the NPU thing, I think I need to do some research and maybe expect a video in the future on it because it seems odd Ubuntu and Fedora on AMD hardware wouldn't work right with the NPU, so maybe there's some configuration I need to follow up with, but I still don't know why the GPU didn't work, and Olama said that it would, of course, and it didn't. As far as the gaming performance goes, it's interesting. Some games clearly benefit from it. And Baldur's Gate, by the way, I recorded 2 versions, one native and one through Proton. The one that I showed you was through Proton, and it was the exact same as native. They were both getting, like 15 frames a second? War Thunder's improvement was really surprising, but still, even if it's inconsistent gains across games, it's still an improvement. So that makes Fedora arguably better if you want to do gaming on Linux. Now, of course, on Ubuntu, you can patch in NTSYNC and make it as fast or whatever you want to call it. But still, out of the box, Fedora is pretty damn good. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm still kind of flying by the seat of my pants with the whole Distro Delves coming back thing. I'm really enjoying making them, and I actually recorded the footage and am recording the voiceover all in the same day, but I won't get around to editing it until next weekend. I wish I could move faster and build a better outro, but my hands are kind of tied because of time. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Those are the 2 big new Linux releases in the past month or 2. Actually, there's probably more, so if you know of more and you would like me to look at another distro, let me know in the comments, and I just might. I appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching.